Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, authors, readers, aspiring authors and readers, and most honored guests. Welcome aboard the MVP Advanced Authors Space Shuttle. I'm your pilot for the evening, Neha Mandal, and we are going to take a little trip to space. Have you ever been to space? I took a recent trip there with one of my favorite authors, Neil deGrasse Tyson, with his book, Space Chronicles. I absolutely believe that books have the magic to launch us into this whole new world, a whole new dimension. And the magicians are the authors and their expert team of publishers. Today we have with us 7 incredible authors and 7 incredible interviewers who will be flying with us. We will be exploring 7 stars up close before safely landing back to Earth. Don't you worry, physical distancing and all safety protocols are in place. From the MVP Advanced Authors crew, I would like to heartily thank the Eagle radio station 100.9 FM for promoting Authors Night since the past week. They have also interviewed one of our authors, Irma Goosen. Please also note that if at any point of time during our journey, you have a question for one of our authors, just type in your question with your name in it in the comment section in the YouTube, and one of our crew members will attend to you shortly. We will have 2 sessions of question and answers, one midway in midair and the other just after we land. So ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts and get ready for blast off. Our first star is a youth author, a speaker, and a visionary, Irma Goosen. She loves kids of all ages and volunteers at her local library as a storyteller and a reader. Irma has internationally published the Guardian series of books, and today she will be joining Matthew Fox to talk about her book, On the Edge, the first of the Guardian series. She will also shed some light on her upcoming children's book series. Please help me welcome Irma Goosen and her interviewer, Matthew Fox.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much, Neha, for that wonderful introduction. I'm very, very lucky to be going first, and I am very fortunate I have Irma with me. But we'll get straight on to it. Irma, we've all been witness to your passion and enthusiasm within Toastmasters and willingness to take up the flag beyond the club. Personally, I know you to be very passionate about our youth of today. Tell us what drives you and if that inspired you to write your first book, please.
Thank you, Matt. That is an amazing question. What drives me is the fact that I have gone through horrendous times with my daughter being at the receiving end of bullying, of not being able to stand up for herself. And I realized that there are more kids like her, and I wanted to become a voice for our youth because they are the next generation of leaders. And that is what's pushing me to write my books, even though the topics might be controversial, because I feel that it's up to us to show how our future leaders could become leaders by our example.
Thank you very much. So I think I get a gist for the types of ideas that inspire your books. How long did it take you to write your first book?
The first book was easy. I wrote it over a Christmas weekend about 5-6 years ago. The words flew out of my mind onto my laptop, and I was surprised myself.
Oh, excellent. That's pretty fast, and I think that would inspire many of us. Of course, many of us do fleetingly think about becoming authors ourselves. When did you first realize that you wanted to become an author?
I've always loved writing stories. But you know how it is. We go through life and we put our dreams on the back burner and we put it in a corner of our minds where we almost forget about it. And then when my daughter went through all the issues and we as a family realized what steps we had to take to help her, and I started writing my books, that's when the light bulb came on and I realized this is it. I wanted to write and I wanted to fulfill my dream.
So I now know that you're passionate about writing, and I know how long it took you to write your first book. But how many have you written so far? And can you tell us which one is your favorite and why?
I have just completed my 4th book in the series. That one took me a year to write. My favorite book is the one that was published a year ago. It's the 3rd book in the series. It's Who Am I? I think we all struggle with our identity at some time in our lives. And this book was fun because with the young teen in the book, I discovered so many facets of what she was going through. And I'm sure that we as writers, we put some of our life experiences in the books as well. And that makes it more realistic, in my opinion.
No, thank you very much. I wonder if you could tell me, what was one of the most surprising things you learned about yourself when writing your books?
You know, Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it's done. I thought it was going to be absolutely impossible to write a 2nd book or a 3rd book or the 4th book. And I realized if I did not push myself, I could easily procrastinate. Netflix is such a fun thing to do because you do absolutely nothing. That being said, though, once I realized I wanted to write full time, I started motivating myself every morning. I meditate and I write every single day because that is the only way we will accomplish anything in life.
Of course, of course. Now, I know you to be a wonderful person, of course, but I have heard that authors can be just a little bit strange at times. What would you say is your most interesting writing quirk?
I get crabby. Don't bother me. Don't interrupt me. Don't come and ask me what is for supper. I want to write. When I am in the groove, I want to write. And yeah, my family, sometimes they probably thought, she says she's a writer and we have to cook for ourselves. No fun at all. But besides that, I do tend to forget to eat. And I can spend many, many hours writing. I don't seem to notice the time that goes by because I believe that when we write what's inside of us, all of us can benefit from it.
Wonderful, yes. I think it's easy to forget to eat. Don't forget to breathe, please.
I'm breathing.
Okay, you've written a book, but how to get it published? How did that work for you?
It happened quite by chance. I wrote my book and I thought, now what? Funny enough, you find inspiration in the weirdest places. I was at gym, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I happened to mention to my personal coach, I wrote a book, but I don't know what to do with it. And she mentioned, you know, my aunt does something, she's something with books, contact her. Well, that was a relationship made in heaven because my editor and hybrid publisher, she's in Vancouver on the island, and she has been there for me from the start. But it wasn't easy because just like being a Toastmaster and you present your speeches and you cannot have an ego, well, let me tell you, if you are a writer, You have to leave your ego outside the room, outside in space, because once an editor gets hold of your book and your words, things change quite a bit sometimes. And as my editor has told me, she said, Irma, you are a wonderful storyteller, but you sometimes don't know how to write. And that is so important. We need to understand that all of us can find a way to make ourselves better, and we can find a way to improve. And I've learned since then that I edit my own work. I make sure I go through it. I get beta readers. They go through my books. And that is before my book gets to the editor. That way, she doesn't charge me too much money either.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great, great advice for everybody there. Do you think someone could be a writer if they don't feel the emotions as strongly as you do?
It depends what you would like to write. All of us have a book within us. Every single one of us. We go through life, we experience life. And you know what? Sometimes you have so much to share with other people. And even if you don't write fiction, if you want to write nonfiction, you will get involved with your book one way or the other. You might think that you are not emotionally attached. At the end of the day, it is like a puppy that you raise to be a full-grown dog, or it is like one of your children who you raise from baby to adulthood. You do get attached because you see your story grow. You see the words just format themselves. They go along. They start writing the story for you, and you get guided by what you put down without even realizing that that is what we all want, to just tell our stories.
I think I understand exactly where you're coming from. Well, it's been a wonderful interview so far, but I would love to leave the last word with you. Can you please provide a piece of advice? You've done much of that already, but one more piece of advice for all our aspiring authors in the audience.
It's okay. Take your laptop, take a pen and paper, take your journal and start writing. All of you have a story within you, and we want to know what that story is, because your story might save a life, which is what I'm hoping my books would do, but also it could teach us something. Be brave, be bold, and start writing.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Irma. What a pleasure this was. And I'll hand it back to you, Neha.
Thank you, Matt.
Don't we all secretly wish that we had a guardian angel in our lives? Thank you very much, Irma, for being one and inspiring all the aspiring writers to just pick up the pen and a piece of paper. I'm almost thinking of deleting my Netflix account now. Continuing our journey, our next exploration is to learn to focus on things that matter. Things that really, really matter. Our next star is Anthony Sanni, who's a consultant, a speaker, and an author. Anthony has authored the book, The Law of the Vital Few. With a bachelor's degree in industrial chemistry and a master's in engineering, he aims to maximize productivity and presentation skills. To get the answer to the million-dollar question, how do we increase the productivity? Please join me in welcoming Anthony Sanni and Wendy Swirsky.
Thanks so much, Neha. That was great. Anthony, I am probably one of your biggest fans. I read your book and I absolutely loved it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are a consultant. You're a professional speaker. You're a coach. You're a family man. And probably most importantly, you're a Toastmaster.
Oh, of course, most importantly, for sure.
So where did you find time to write a book? What was your schedule like?
Wow. It was Spartan is the word I like to use for it. Do you want the details? So I would get up, all of them. Okay, so I still worked full time, and I started my job officially at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So I would get up every day at 5 a.m., get dressed, winter and all, and I would walk, ride a bike, or take the bus to the nearest coffee shop near me for their opening at 5:30. Then I would sit there and write right when they opened, from 5:30 to about 6:30, which is exactly the time I needed to catch the next bus, to be on the next train, to be at work for 7:30. And I did that probably 5 days a week. And on Saturdays, I would work 6 a.m. to noon. And then Sundays, I did not do any writing because it's important to stay sane as well. So that was pretty much my schedule. Now, I'm not going to lie and say I did that every day, but I'd say about 90% of the time, that was my schedule.
You're very lucky because you obviously have a great support group with your family, an understanding partner, and kids as well.
Yes,
good for you.
Yes. And I think that's important for all authors, right? I feel like your family needs to know what you're doing and they need to be on board. Otherwise, it will be very frustrating. I think Irma alluded to that, right? They may not understand if you don't make it clear. And I think that was really helpful to me. My wife picked up a lot of the slack and she got a very bold mention in the acknowledgements for that. So acknowledge them too. It's nice.
Yeah, she certainly did. So there you are at a coffee shop, putting words, word. How did that become a book? Like, did you hire an editor, a proofreader? What did you do?
I feel like we're going to hear a lot of the same things tonight because, like Irma said, editors are invaluable. I hired an editor who specialized in working with people like me. So people who sell expertise or who write about a certain type of content, not so much storytelling. For as great as it is, I wrote a nonfiction book, as you probably know. So she specializes in that. So she did many different kinds of editing for me. And then I had a proofreader as well. I had 2 beta readers who I paid. And then I had 1 beta reader, my wife, who I did not pay, at least not in cash. But I think the more eyeballs you get on your book, and more especially the more professionally trained eyes you get on your book, just the better book you're going to have at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. If you read your own words, you read what you want it to say, not what it actually does say.
Exactly.
So here's your book. I love this book. Now, did you have help picking out the colors? I have made the error before of calling this red. It's not red, it's some kind of fancy orange. How did you come up with it?
It's F206D orange. That's how specific it is. That's the hex code for that color. Well, the reason it's that color is because those are my brand colors. And I've used those colors for about 3 years on all my blogs and my website. And so it just made sense to visually keep the book consistent with the writing I've done in the past. And that's why it's those colors. So it's a dark blue and an orange. Most of my content is in that scheme generally.
I will never make the mistake of calling it red.
It's not red. It's not red.
Number, orange. Well, I can't remember. So what was the most surprising thing that you learned from writing your book?
Wow. There are quite a few. The most important one, I think the one that's relevant to our audience this evening, is you become a better thinker, regardless of your subject. Again, I wrote a nonfiction book. You understand your subject more when you try to write 65,000 words on the subject. A lot of the gaps in your thinking get revealed. A lot of the assumptions you made about what you thought you knew they become revealed. And in solving those problems, in disentangling those knots in your thinking and your mind, I think it makes you a lot more fluent in your thinking and a lot sharper in how you approach your subject. I think I'm a better consultant, speaker, thinker for writing that book. And I found that surprising because I thought I knew it, but now I feel like I know it even more because of the process of working through the book.
Good for you. Okay, so you can't take my words because I am your greatest fan. But what are other people saying about your book? Do people come and talk to you? What are they saying?
I really want to take your words though. Like, can I please just use? Okay, seriously.
You're awesome.
Seriously, okay. I won't take your words. But let me just preface this by saying that if you do your best on something, I think that's what matters the most. If people give you positive feedback, it's a plus and it's definitely welcome. But I think the most important takeaway is that you do your best. And at times I felt like I agonized too much on the book, but the response has been very encouraging. I remember a funny story. Okay, these are not your words. These are not your words, Wendy. But I went to donate my book to the Calgary Public Library. And when I searched and tried to get in contact with someone, I found out the book was already there roughly 2 or 3 months after it was published. And there were 9 people on the waiting list to read it. I couldn't even borrow my own book, for goodness sake, from the library. So for me, that was a huge, for lack of a better term, it was an important moment for me to know that all that hard work is now in other people's hands and people are waiting in line to read that book. Now, this is not to impress or to brag, but I think it means that when you do the hard work of doing something that you can be proud of, I think other people start to appreciate it too. And hopefully you can reach more people that way with your work.
Yeah, I think it's just totally amazing that it's in the library. And I will be standing in the library telling everyone, I know the author of this book.
Get this one. Don't borrow it. Go buy it.
Yeah.
Buy 3
Yeah,
copies.
buy it. I know the website. Yeah, go ahead, buy it. It's a great read. Everyone needs a copy on their desk at all times to remind them of what is important.
See why I wanted to use your words, Wendy? Your words are the best. You have the best words.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So you've written a book. What advice do you give other people who might be aspiring to put words on a page and make a book?
Words. Wow. It's funny, as a writer or author, sometimes you don't have words, but I remember something a friend of mine told me back in university when we were both kind of flirting with writing poetry and essays and stuff. And I would tell him about writer's block. And he said something somebody else told him. He said, cooks cook, singers sing, but only writers think they can get away without writing. And that kind of stayed with me. You know, everybody else just does their jobs, but writers feel for some reason they can get away with just not doing their jobs. So my word to aspiring authors is just have a routine, hold it as sacred, and just write. Honestly, it's that simple, just write. And it's good to have a target word count every day. I'm going to get into my productivity stuff now. If your book is going to be 50,000 words long, and part of this is credit to Russ Dantu as well for sharing this with me. If your book is going to be 50,000 words long, how many words do you need to write every day to get it to that number within the time that you want the book to be done, at least for the first draft? And then just do the work. Just do the work. Just write every day like a writer should do.
Yeah, it's a job. It really is.
Yeah.
And you did a very good job. So
thank you,
in closing,
appreciate it.
Biggest fan, what is your biggest piece of advice? I've now got a whole bunch of words on a page and I want to publish this book. What would you say should be my next step?
If you're a first-time author and you're not being published by a big publishing house, I would say find an all-in-one package Like there are tons of self-publishing houses out there. If you need more information, you can contact me directly. Find an all-in-one package. If you're a more experienced author and you're publishing self-published, I would say farm it out to different people. But if you have a big publishing house, this doesn't matter because you just submit your work and they do the rest.
Yeah. Easy peasy. Anthony, it's been an honor. I'm so glad I got to do this, and I hope that you inspired some other people other than me to try to put some words on a page.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, back to you, Neha.
He's on mute.
I'm sorry. Here we go again. I was doing the math to just see how many words I would need to write per day in order to publish a 50,000 words book. And you know what? I stopped the calculation. But thank you very much, Anthony, for telling all us aspiring writers to reiterate the fact that all we have to do is to take this pen and start writing. But again, just remember, writers, Sunday is same day. Thank you again, Anthony. We are now going to change course to meet an entertainer and a customer service expert, Chuck Rose. When Chuck was 3 years old, he told his mother that he wanted to be a singer when he grew up. And sure enough, look at him. Chuck has been singing and entertaining professionally since he was 18. Also a successful entrepreneur, Chuck has owned and operated several pubs and fine dining restaurants. Today, he will share with us an excerpt from his book, Dish Pit to Dining Rooms, Lessons from a Lifetime in Hospitality. Please put your hands together to welcome our next star, Chuck Rose, and his interviewer, Teresa Merrifield.
Thank you, Neha, for that lovely introduction of Chuck and his very funny, very informative book, Dish Pit to Dining Room. I have my copy here. Chuck, in your book, Dish Pit to Dining Room, you talk about the most important thing that you learned in your years in the hospitality industry. Would you share that with us now?
I would love to. I actually wrote it in the book and pointed it out that I thought it might be the most valuable lesson in the book. So I'm going to just read from the book. And just as by way of setup here, I had been talking before this in the book about the best anti-theft system for your staff, to keep your staff from stealing from you. And I spent about 3 pages on that, but let me sum it up in one sentence. Treat your team with integrity and loving kindness so that they don't want to steal from you. And now I'm going to read from the book. There's a valuable lesson here. For some, this may be the most important lesson in the book. You won't always get what you want, but you will always get who you are. If you're constantly giving out negative energy, distrust, judgment, criticism, low expectations, you're inviting it back into your life. And nothing attracts positive outcomes as much as positive inputs. You might make short-term resolutions to behave differently, but what you do every day tells the staff and the world who you are. And that's what they're going to respond to. You can't fake it. They'll know. Being trustworthy attracts trustworthy people. When people see that you're a person with integrity, most of them will respond in kind. if people see that you're the kind of person who believes in the general goodness of humanity, people will usually live up to your expectations. There's enough for everybody, and you'll naturally get back the good that you put out. I know it sounds like I'm about to break out the guitar and sing Kumbaya, but that is my experience. And according to inspirational speaker Tony Gaskins, you attract what you are, not what you want. If you want it, reflect it. And one more quote from one of my favorite people. You'll never guess who. Once you replace negative thoughts with positive ones, you'll start having positive results. Willie Nelson.
Excellent. So one of the burning questions in my mind when we first set this up was, can you tell us what the process is that you use to write this book?
Oh, I can. The content writing process can be quite simple. That is, if you don't mind paying $5,000 for a coach like I did to take you through the simple formula that I'm going to give you in the next couple of minutes here. Begin by taking 20 minutes. This is point number one. Take 20 minutes and write down 25 chapter headings. Don't overthink it. If you know your subject, you won't have a hard time coming up with the first 5, and they'll lead to the next 5, and so on until you have 25 chapters. Don't worry about the order. Don't feel like you're locked into those 25. You may wind up with several more or a few less. Show them to your coach, and then give him or her the first installment of their fee. And if you ask me to do this for you, I'm going to charge you 100 times what I charged Russ Dantu to help him with his book. Zero. Okay, point number 2. Commit to writing 1 chapter each week. The process is going to be quite simple. You spend 30 to 45 minutes on the phone or on Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp, whatever works for you, with your coach, creating an outline for your chapter. First, you start with the premise, the question, the lesson that you want to share with your audience. Then, why is it important to you? What's the story that makes it relevant to your readers? Third, once you have the premise and the reason for that, the why, go into detail and teach the reader what they need to know to avoid the pitfall, learn the lesson, get what you got from the story. And fourth, and finally, sum it up and prepare the ground for the next chapter. Now it's time to get to work. Write the rough draft of the chapter, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 words, and send it off to your coach. By the way, that works out to, at 2,000 words, divided by 5 days a week, 400 words a day. That's not a lot of writing, 400 words a day. So you've sent it off to your coach. You give your coach some time to evaluate it. And then point number 4, you meet with your coach next week for an honest evaluation of what you've written and a planning session for the next chapter using the same format. Follow through on this commitment. This is point number 5. Follow through on this commitment and write a rough draft of a chapter each week until you have Anthony's term 50,000 words, Anthony's estimate, 50,000 words. Now, some book coaches will tell you that 20,000 words is enough if you fill up the book with lots of cartoons and illustrations. Sorry, my phone's ringing here. Other coaches will tell you that you've got to have at least 70,000 words or else nobody's going to take your book seriously. My coach said 50,000. When you've finished your 25 chapters, your rough draft, put it away for a few weeks. Let it sit. Then take it out and start rewriting and refining until you're satisfied that it's the best you can do. During the rewriting process, keep in mind that you want this book to be valuable to your reader. What are you giving them that'll make them glad they gave you their hard-earned cash? What are you giving them that'll make them want to give you a whole bunch more cash to come and speak at their convention? After you've got it as good as you can get it, as finely written as you can get it, hire an editor. Mine cost $2,000, and my book is a lot better because of his work. I edited Russ Dantu's book for a lot less than that. Read it and see if I did okay. When you've got a final draft, then you start working in formatting, cover photo, title, chapter titles, chapter order. You may want to hire an expert for this. Now, there's one thing I want to make sure that you're aware of. My coach was a member of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. His name is Les Kletke. My book would never have happened without Les. And if you want a professional coach who will help to make your book better and make sure you get it finished, contact me and I'll give you Les's contact information. If you don't have $5,000, talk to a friend. Get somebody who knows you to be your coach. It's just, you've got the formula there, just follow it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I hope everybody was taking notes on that one, because that pretty much is signed, sealed, and delivered on how we can all write a book. So I have started a book maybe 100 times. I don't know, maybe more. And my next question leads to, what kept you motivated? What kept your fingers on the keyboard and your butt glued to the chair long enough to be able to take this project from beginning to end? I think you alluded to it earlier.
Well, the very first thing, of course, is the coach. When you've got somebody that you're accountable to, that you've made a commitment to, that's the first step. Second, think of it as an investment. It's a job. It's like having a regular bit of work that you can do. I can't speak for all speakers, but I know many speakers who would say their book was what took them from being a sometimes professional speaker to being a full-time professional speaker. People will hire you if your book is good. Sometimes they'll hire you even if your book isn't good, if you sell it well. But if your book is good, you will get hired as a speaker.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Chuck. We just have about 30 seconds left. Any last word of encouragement or brilliance?
Yeah, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So there you have it, folks. Dish Pit to Dining Room, a book by Chuck Rose. Very funny, very informative, everything that you ever wanted to know about customer service and the hospitality industry. Thanks so much, Chuck, for writing this book. I enjoyed it. And back to you, Neha.
Thank you very much, Chuck, for elaborating on the steps to go through writing a book, and not just having those frozen thoughts frozen in the mind, but to just make them fluid and get a book in hand. And also the importance of having a coach. So please be ready to answer your phones for all those aspiring writers who are going to start buzzing you. Wow, 3 stars and their amazing stories. What an incredible journey this has been so far. We will now zoom into a quick question and answer session with one of our cabin crews, Gordon Grant. Off to you, Gordon.
Great, thank you very much, Neha. We didn't have any questions come through on the chat group tonight. I think everybody was so enthralled with our speakers so far that we did not have a chance to record any questions. But knowing the 3 speakers and authors as well as I do, I'm sure there's one piece of information that as they finished their speech, they thought, if I could just give our audience just one more little bit of my wisdom, I will take the advantage. And this is your opportunity now for all 3 speakers to offer one last piece of information you haven't shared yet.
Can I go first?
Absolutely.
Okay, Gord, you know me too well. You're absolutely right. The minute the conversation ended, I thought I should have said this. And this is while you're writing your book, before you write your book, it helps, I think, to stop reading like a reader and start reading like an author. So first of all, I'm assuming you're reading, because if you're not reading, why are you writing? Okay, let's assume you're doing that. If you are reading, start reading like an author. Ask yourself, why did he or she do that? Why is that story there? Why did they keep that statistic until this part of the book instead of starting with it? Just start reading like an author. And I think when you take that back to your writing, it'll make you that much better as an author. And again, save you on those editor fees. Eh, Irma? Wink, wink.
Great. Thank you very much, Anthony. I see Mr. Rose has got a hand up with a bit of wisdom for us. Go ahead, Chuck.
Gordon, the one thing that I want to stress to people is that if you're writing a book that doesn't have an audience, then there's really no point to it. So be very aware that you're writing for a purpose. You're writing to inform a certain segment of the population about something that they need to know, want to know, will benefit from knowing. The most important factor in having sales of a book is having it written so that there is an audience for it. And I think that this is an area where I kind of blew it, because the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry is full of a bunch of people like me, know-it-alls, who every one of us knows how to do everything you're doing better than you do. And I'm sorry I'm exaggerating, but it's the old joke about how many restaurant owners does it take to change a light bulb, and it's 10, 1 to change the light bulb and 9 more to say how he would have done it better. So I didn't pick a good audience, but I think Anthony did. Anthony's got a great audience, and Russ picked the same audience as me, but he sold it to that audience, and I think his book is just superb for that. He's talking about customer service, whereas I was talking about the restaurant business. So we'll get to Russ. So.
Okay, great. And Irma, is there a piece of advice that you'd like to leave us with tonight?
Thank you, Gord. Yes, I want people to realize, everyone who watches at the moment, that it's okay to think that you're not good enough. Write that book anyway, whether it's fiction, whether it's nonfiction. Make sure you do your research. Make sure that your editor doesn't change your whole book, your whole story. And at the end of the day, you still have control of your book and of your words. And make sure that the editor you choose, that you two connect, because that is the most important thing here. It's like a marriage. You're going into this relationship and there has to be trust from both sides. If there's no trust, then you are not going to have a good end result. And I believe that my editor, she is amazing by kicking my butt, keeping me on track, but understanding why I write what I write. And that is important.
Thank you very much, Irma. I appreciate your comments. We're going to take a quick break now for 10 minutes. We'll come back online at 7:55. For those people
hold on, Gordon. We did actually have some questions come through. I'm not sure if you've seen them in chat.
Nope.
And we did also have some questions from you too for our authors.
I have not seen them come through yet.
Okay, first question. What if what you need to write about is real and very sad? How do you manage to leave energy for your day and still write all the sad stories? Irma.
That is a great question. And I know I write quite controversial books because the challenges our youth are going through are not pretty. It's not, oh, I didn't make my team. It's more than that. And what I found is that I do meditate. When I have to write a tough piece, I make sure I meditate. I had to write a tough story. And it took me a year to get the courage to actually sit down and get through what I knew was going to affect me. I cried. It did get to me. I was angry. I was frustrated. And when I spoke to the police doing my research, I was even more frustrated and more angry. But at the end of the day, trust that those words that want to come out, they need to come out. And when you're done writing, you take a deep breath, you go for a walk, you go prepare a meal, and you breathe, because that is what's going to finish that story.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I want to speak to that question too, if I may. If the story that you are presenting is only sad and is only intended to make people sad, please don't write it. Please don't write it. If you don't have an uplift, if there's not a reason for giving us that story to make us better, to make somebody better, to give somebody some relief, then I don't see the point of writing a story that is just to make people cry. If it's not to make people see some light at the end of the tunnel or to improve, don't write it. I'm sorry, find a different story. Or find the light at the end of your own tunnel before you write it.
Great, thank you, Chuck. And Rebecca, are there any other questions coming out of the YouTube?
Yes, we had one more from Zoom here, but I'll switch over to a YouTube one that someone asked was how all of you met and got together to make this author's night possible.
I'm going to talk to that. If it were not for Sheree Rashani, we would not have this author's night. She went out of her way to create a platform where we could all showcase what we are passionate about. So kudos to Sheree. She arranged for my radio interview with the Eagle. She arranged for all the interviews to be done by our interviewers. And she arranged for all of us to practice and to make sure that this evening would run smoothly. So Sheree, kudos to you and thank you so much for believing in us.
Thank you, Irma. Rebecca, any more?
Sorry, none of this would have happened without us all being members of MVP Toastmasters. So.
Yes, another one from Zoom. This one's specifically for Anthony. If there's a time, when did you decide there was a need for your type of book for a type of book that you've written?
That's a fantastic question. I think Chuck started to talk about this earlier, which is thinking about your audience. And for me, I'd started speaking about productivity for a while, and I noticed that a lot of the groups and businesses that were inviting me in to speak were trying to deal with a lot of changes. And I knew I did not want to write about change management. It's just not my thing. I'm not passionate about it. But why they brought me in was to help people be more effective with their time. And I think with what we've seen happening in the economy in the world, especially here in Alberta, more and more people and businesses are trying to literally do more by doing less, which is the subtitle of my book. So that's how that idea got into my head. And from that point, for our audience, if you're thinking about writing a book, it becomes about putting your spin, your stamp, your expertise on that subject. There's no new subject out there, but you can have a new spin, hopefully an interesting spin that makes people go, huh? And then that's how you start to develop that idea. So thanks for that question. That's how that idea came up. It was pretty much because of what was going on around me and in my speaking business.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Anthony. The voice in my ear is telling me that we're just going to carry on with our program now, so I will pass it back to our Toastmaster, Neha.
Thank you, Gordon. And thank you to all the wonderful authors for kindling the writer and the reader spirit in us all. We now know that a book is an amalgamation of compromises, sacrifices, and emotions. Thank you for that. We have now set our course to Success Strategies, 7 Pillars of an Empowered Life, authored by Leonard Quilty. Leonard is an author, a speaker, and a poet. Leonard is a 6-time author and a motivational speaker. He strongly believes that we are only limited by the things that we allow to limit us. He is dedicated in getting this message across globally through his YouTube channel, Motivation in a Moment. Please join me in welcoming Leonard Quilty and Purvana Naderi.
Thank you, Neha, for the great introduction. Leonard, you really inspired me and can't wait to read your book. Let us know, how long have you been a writer?
Thanks, Purvana. I've been a professional writer for about 20 years now. I started out 20 years ago writing a newspaper column. I'm a teacher by trade, so my column was called From the Teacher's Desk. I started writing that in my home province of Newfoundland and Labrador, and I got a good readership from that, and I did that for 15 years, mostly bi-weekly. And then my column got some traction across the country. It was published in 7 provinces at one time. So I got a lot of good feedback from our readers, and I was really encouraged by that. And then 8 years ago, in 2012, I published my first book, a manual for peace. And so since that, I've published, as you indicated, several other books as well. But I started writing professionally, getting paid for my writing 20 years ago.
Interesting to know. What is the main source of inspiration for your writing?
Oh, I get inspiration everywhere. I get inspiration from the people I work with, from my family, and very much from the books that I'm reading. Most of the books I read are nonfiction, personal development books, self-help books. And, I started reading those types of books, 25, 30 years ago. And I started out reading books by an author by the name of Og Mandino. And he wrote a lot of very successful, very well-received books 20, 30 years ago. When I started reading his books, I was really inspired by his principles. And I always fashion myself as, if I can aspire to get his message across, through my own writing, he had powerful life messages, but wrapped around stories. So I really like that writing style, and I learned a lot from him. But nowadays I read, a lot of self-help literature, authors like Anthony Robbins, Jack Canfield, Napoleon Hill. I've read a lot of the Canadian author Robin Sharma's books as well. So I'm really, and also I also try to follow. I'm following some of these current authors on social media, Twitter. So I keep abreast of their thinking, and I try to keep up. And I find myself as a teacher too, as an English teacher, I try to share some of their ideas with my students on a daily basis, and I want them to start thinking about what that point that Anthony Robbins is making, or Robin Sharma, how can I relate that to my own life? So I guess that's the teacher in me trying to inspire my students.
Wonderful. My favorite question: what time of the day do you usually write, and why that time of the day?
Yeah, good question. Something like Anthony shared. I'm an early morning riser. I don't always get up at 5 like Anthony, but I'm usually up by 5:30, and I find that's my most productive time in terms of putting ideas together. And but as an English teacher, and I also teach creative writing and publishing, so I'm writing with my students on a weekly basis. So that's normally in the afternoon. So. But my goal is to further discipline myself to write every morning, and I sometimes get distracted by life, as we all do, I'm sure, as authors, and but that's what I'm working on. But I find early morning is my most productive time.
Interesting to know, because I know Charles Dickens and Victor Hugo were also early risers to write their book. Interesting. In terms of self-publishing your books, what platform would you recommend?
Yeah, good question too. I've used several platforms. My first book I used CreateSpace, and I paid, as Chuck referenced to, paying an editor. I paid an editor through CreateSpace, and this editor really helped me with my book in terms of structuring. So I found that beneficial, and CreateSpace is owned by Amazon. But my last 2 or 3 books I've used Kindle Direct Publishing. And I find that platform, and that's also owned by Amazon, as we probably all are aware, Kindle Direct Publishing. And I actually took a course from a guy in Vancouver on how to publish books with Kindle. I took that course 3 or 4 years ago. And that really helped me to set up my books and, and how to farm out to different organizations or different websites to get things done, like a cover design, things like that. But I find Kindle Direct Publishing very user-friendly, and the fact that and it's free as well. It's free. So once you put it out, once you publish it on Kindle, you can do the ebook and the paperback copy as well. And then right away, it's loaded up on Amazon so that your readers can access it. And they also have that look inside feature too, which I like. And so I find Kindle really, really efficient.
Interesting. Can you tell us what is the biggest challenge for you as a writer?
Yeah, I think I referenced that earlier, in trying to maintain the continuity with writing. Yeah, like I write pretty well every day, but I'm not as consistent as I want to be. And I like what Anthony said about having that discipline, getting up and every day, excuse me, Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday and writing on a consistent basis. So I need to do more of that. That's my challenge. And then, Christmas holidays come up and you want to spend time with your family, and then it's easy to get out of your routine. And as Anthony alluded to too, but we do need to take care of our own wellness, and we do need to slow down and just take a pause and breathe. But that's my biggest challenge, just continuing the discipline of writing every day.
Great. Yeah, discipline is the key. What is your favorite book?
My favorite book? Well, I like all my books, all my 6 books. But I think the last book I published, this one, Confidence in the Game of Life, it's a book of poetry. In the fall of 2019, I decided to challenge myself and hopefully provide a model for my creative writing students. I decided, excuse me, to write a poem every day for 60 days straight. So the book has 60 poems. And I also further disciplined myself to write each poem in 10 minutes or less. And I always did that in the morning, like right when I got up, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And are the poems rather short? Yeah, they are. 10 minutes, like you can't write a whole lot in 10 minutes. But the thing I like about poetry, reading poetry and writing poetry, is the whole idea of the economy of words. And if you can get the words right, you can say a lot in 30 words or less, for sure. So I'm very proud of that book. I've got some good feedback from our readers and from my students that have read it too. And I think it's inspired them, like that they need, whatever they're doing, if they're writing essays for me or they want to write a book, they need to have that discipline to follow through on their plans to get that book together or to finish their writing.
I can't wait to read that. What is your current writing project and how is it progressing?
Yeah, I've been working on over the last year or so. You might say I'm a collector of quotes. So I love motivational quotes or quotes of any sort, from Rumi the poet to Robin Sharma, the author. So I love collecting quotes. So what I've been doing with that book, which is almost finished now, the first draft, is to have a collection of quotes, and then I give my interpretation of the quote and what the message that is that I got out of the quote. So I'm hoping to share that with my readers, and that, like, well, I read this quote, this is what I got out of it, and here's a recommendation from that quote that I would give to you, my reader. So I'm mindful of that, and that's where I'm that's where I'm a little bit slowed down with that now. I've got all the quotes together, got all my commentary done, but I'm working now on, well, what's the message for my reader? Like, how can they take that quote and learn something from it that they can put into their life to enhance the quality of their life?
We are almost out of the time, Leonard. So my last question, if you can answer quick, what is your recommendation for your audience in terms of becoming a writer or publishing a book, maybe in 30 seconds?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question too. And I think some of the authors have already alluded to this. Well, be a strong reader, first of all. And, you know, my passion is in nonfiction books and self-help books. So if you want to be a writer in that area, well, read a lot of those books. If you like, for example, historical fiction, you want to write books in that genre, well, read a lot of those authors and just become familiar with their writing style and make their style your own in terms of doing the writing, keeping constant with your writing, and then actually putting it out to the world, publishing your book. That would be my best advice.
Thank you, Leonard. What a pleasure it was tonight to talk to you. Back to you, Neha.
Thank you, Parvana.
Thank you very much, Leonard, for being a true inspiring teacher to your students and to all us aspiring writers. I'm reminded of one of Robin Sharma's quotes, that the activity you are most avoiding contains your biggest opportunity. So I see that the common message for all aspiring writers is, again, just pick up your pen and write. Just write, but be diligent about it. But remember, Anthony said, Sunday is sane day. We are now en route to the customer service domain. Our next author brings with him over 30 years of management, sales, trade shows, and customer services experience. He's also equipped with delivering workshops, breakout sessions, and keynotes in customer service. Russ Dantu is the author of the book, At Your Service, a guide to delivering exceptional customer service. As Russ always says, why settle for results when you can have Russells? Please help me welcome Russ Dantu and Valerie Erickson.
Hey, Russ, my friend, how are you this evening?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for doing this, Val. Great to see you.
Oh, you too. I'm honored. I'm honored to be chosen to speak to you on your phenomenal book. There's just one little problem. I love your book. I've read your book cover to cover, and I gave it to a friend. So I don't have a copy here tonight to show. And I really wanted to, but she won't give the book back. She loves it that much.
Oh, okay, no worries. I happen to have an extra copy here, so you're welcome to have it. Here you go.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like I said, your book, At Your Service, A Guide to Delivering Exceptional Customer Service, is phenomenal. I read it cover to cover. My favorite chapter is chapter 16 with all your golden nuggets in there. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about it though, because this is Authors Night. We all want to get the insight from you, the expert.
Right, sounds great.
I am considering writing a book as well, but I wanted to know, where did you get the idea to write this book?
Well, thanks for the question, Val. You know, I've been speaking professionally for many years, but back in 2015, I joined CAPS, the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. And as I got to know some of the more experienced members there, I started asking more questions. What can I do to take my speaking to the next level? So, you know, some of them said to me, well, you need to work on your website, you know, pick a lane, because I was speaking on several different subjects. So I narrowed it down, said I want to be a customer service speaker. Now I do still speak on a few other things, but my website says I speak on that. The second thing they said was you have to have effective one-sheets. Now a one-sheet is when somebody asks, what do you do? What do you speak on? You can send them an electronic file that tells you who you are, what you do, some benefits of working with you as a speaker. So you can create many different one sheets specific to the industry you want to speak in. So I did that. And then the last thing they said was, you must have a book. And it's like, no, I've done some CDs and things like that. Said, no. If you want to make it in this industry, you have to have a book. So that was the third thing I started doing. And I started working on that in 2017 with Mr. Chuck Rose. And I think it was April of 2018, it actually came out, it went to print. So it was a fabulous, fabulous journey, and that's where it started.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. That gives me hope and inspiration that I can actually maybe do that, especially with the help of you and Chuck and all the rest of the authors probably. What did you learn about yourself? Like, what did you find? It's often writing is very cathartic. Did you find that you learned anything about yourself in this process?
Well, and that word is exactly what it is. It's a process. And we've heard some of the other speakers say it tonight as well, is it has to become a habit. You have to get up every day, whether it's 5 a.m. in the morning writing, and I'm like that too. I love writing early in the morning. That's when I'm most productive. Or, lunch hour, if you take some time out, or the end of the day. You have to make it every day, set aside time to work on the project. And I remember the 1999 world champion of public speaking, Mr. Craig Valentine, in a session I attended years ago, said the secret to great speeches, and he said, and you can use this for books as well, is writing 500 words every day. So, and it doesn't have to be on anything specific. Just pick up a pen or sit at your keyboard. I prefer a pen. I seem to write a lot better with that to start with, and then I move it. But get in the habit of writing 500 words a day. And then when you have to, or you want to write a book, it'll just come to you that much easier.
Okay. I know that I'm a huge procrastinator, and I will put things aside and really put it off. So did you find that you had any challenges, or what was your greatest challenge really in this whole process?
Yeah, I'm like you as well. I am a huge procrastinator, and I still do it to this day. I have a to-do list that I write every night what I'm going to be doing the next day. And unfortunately, some of those items can stay on that to-do list for weeks. And my writing a book, when I first got into it, it was doing that as well. It just kept transferred where I wasn't working on it. And then along came Mr. Chuck Rose, who had just finished writing his book, and I was mentioned to him, and he took me under his wing very graciously, worked with me. I thought I paid him something, but when he said I didn't, I was looking through my checkbook. It's like, oh, maybe it was just some lunches and some beer or something like that. But yeah, no, that's what was my biggest problem. And thank goodness Chuck came along and kept me accountable.
Well, that actually leads me right into the next question I was going to ask you. Did you seek outside help other than Chuck? Like, were you able to find help outside to assist in this?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I spoke to several different authors to get a feel for what they did and everything, but all praise to Chuck, absolutely. He set up just like the process he explained. That's what he did with me. I was his student, he was the master, and every week I came to him with a chapter. He would sit down and talk to me about it. He would challenge me on some of my beliefs on what I thought was going on, or he would say, what about this? Or if he didn't really think the story that I would use in that chapter was solid enough, then we'd look at other stories that maybe would work better, or statistics or quotes or anything like that. So it was a really enlightening process. And that was my favorite part, was being challenged by Chuck every week.
Okay, so you've spoken about the challenges and that you are a fellow procrastinator. What part of this process, if any, did you enjoy the most?
Well, I don't know with all of our viewers tonight out there. I mean, I love a good debate. So again, going back to when Chuck would question me on why I was saying what I was saying in a chapter, we would get into some pretty deep conversations where he was way over here and I was way over there. And sometimes we'd meet in the middle. Sometimes he'd pull me over to his side, and sometimes I would convince him of why I was thinking that way. So I really enjoyed that part, because you need people to challenge what you're writing so that you know you've got it right. And I think that's what Chuck did for me.
Okay, awesome. Now, I know you've been in business, customer service for over 30 years. And if I understand you correctly, that one sheet is essentially like a flyer. So how were you able to take, or how did this book help you in your business, or did it?
You know what? It absolutely did. So this is like having a big business card. And you know, when you're looking for new speaking engagements, you're out there, you're calling people, you're talking to them, and sometimes they're sitting on the fence. And this little book here, you just send it to them as your gift, or you hand it to them as your gift, and you say, look, have a read, see what you think. And you know what? I've landed several speaking engagements because of that. They've read it and they said, absolutely loved it. We'd like to see what you can do for our group. And, you know, I mean, I've got a story file that I set all different types of industry files so that if I'm speaking for a specific industry, I can pick that out as well. So I'm always looking for ways to add to that too. But yeah, it's my best piece of advertising for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I love that you refer to it as a business card. I mean, don't we all get hundreds, thousands of business cards, and what do we do with it? But when we have this book, that is fantastic. And popping it into your purse, you can't possibly get it lost amongst the rest of the business cards. So that's awesome. Like I said, I love your book. And as a consumer and a business person, I can use it from both sides. And I do. I look at it from the business side of it, from the customer service side, and also as a consumer too. So I like your book for many different reasons.
Thank you.
Big question though, Russ. Do you have another book in the midst?
You know what, there's because I think networking is an extension of customer service. So I'm starting to speak a lot on networking as well. And I'm a master networker. I've made millions of dollars over the years. And that's gross, so don't get too excited. I'm not a very wealthy man, but
Awesome.
I definitely like to write a full book on that. I'd like to write one on presentation skills as well, because I still get asked to speak on that all the time. Right
Perfect.
now, I need to focus on other things, but yes, there's a couple more books that will be in the works sometime.
Excellent. What's your key golden nugget takeaway for your audience? We've got about 30 seconds left, Russ.
All right, 30 seconds. I'll only give you one then, and it may be repeated, but hire somebody that's done it before, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. Without Chuck Rose, I would probably still be procrastinating about writing my book. So yeah, I'm giving Chuck a lot of praise tonight, but you know, whether it's Chuck or somebody else, or Leonard or Anthony or Irma or Martin or whoever, you know, if they've written a book, they can offer so much good advice for you to take away.
Thank you very much. And back to you, Shoray. And for those of you that don't have his book, At Your Service, A Guide to Delivering Exceptional Customer Service by Russ Dantu. Back to you, Neha.
Mute again.
Thank you, Russ, for emphasizing that aspiring authors should eliminate the word procrastination from their vocabulary. We have all heard the quote, "The early bird catches the worm." But today, I strongly believe that the early bird also catches words and nugget thoughts. Also, please find a coach. All you aspiring writers and authors, find your Chuck Rose to be that motivation factor for you. Our coordinates are now set to welcome an international bestseller author on Amazon in 2 different categories. Ben Thorkelson is a certified world-class speaking coach and has co-authored the book, World-Class Speaking in Action. Backed by extensive experience in print production, communication, and design, Ben will give us a peek into his upcoming book, Self-Publish Without Perishing. Please join me in welcoming Ben Thorkelson and Brenda Patterson.
Thank you, Neha. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Hey, Ben. The book, World Class Speaking in Action, is a collaboration between Craig Valentine, Mitch Meyerson, and 50 public speaking coaches. You wrote the last chapter. How did you get involved in that project, Ben?
Well, in 2012, I certified with Mitch Meyerson and Craig Valentine as a world-class speaking coach. Russ just mentioned Craig Valentine. And we certified based on their book, World-Class Speaking. Then in 2013, Craig and Mitch decided it would be a fun thing to have do a second book called World Class Speaking in Action. They wanted 50 of their coaches to each contribute a chapter on how they're using the principles of our system. And I was busy with other projects, but I was interested. So I just sort of like made some notes as I was working on other things. And eventually I drafted a pitch and sent it to Mitch and Craig. Now, I was pretty late sending the pitch. And I just said, if you want to use this, I'll write it. My pitch was basically just a title and some bullet points of what I was going to talk about. What I wanted to discuss was how to take the principles of effective communication and how you can use them to inform a personal philosophy. Well, Mitch liked my pitch, and he got a hold of me and said, if you can write this and get it to the editor by the second week of January, I will give you my chapter. This was actually December 10th when we talked. So I said to him, okay, I promise you, I'll get it done. I worked on it diligently right through Christmas, New Year's, all that kind of thing. And I did get it done. But really, I got to write the last chapter in this thing based on the idea that I was able to pitch with just a simple outline. And I was able to adjust my pitch to fit the expectations of the person that I was pitching to. So not just that I was going to pitch something that would appeal to, and I thought, an audience, but I tailored it to fit Mitch. And that's how I got involved in this thing.
Well, not only a pitch, but apparently a hit. Ben, World Class Speaking in Action is available through Amazon. What was your experience with the book launch on Amazon?
It was really a heck of an experience. First of all, once all the chapters were together, Mitch started working on the book launch. For those of you who don't know who Mitch Meyerson is, he has written 11 books on marketing, and several of them are on online marketing. He started putting this together in early March, and he mapped out a plan for us to follow. By early April, we had a full set of instructions. So he had 50 coaches and all of their followers, and we were all sort of plugged into this plan. We knew what to say about the book, what to say, what to email to people, what to post on social media. He had it all planned. On the day of the launch, the 50 coaches all started to execute the plan. And most of us actually took the day off just to sort of watch what happened. Frankly, I was stunned, like literally stunned, because in 6 hours, it made it to 107 overall on Amazon, and it actually peaked out at #1 in 3 categories. One of them was public speaking and presentation, and 2 business categories. I was just over the moon. And, you know, since then, I've had people tell me that, oh, a #1 spot on Amazon is not the same as a #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And I agree. No, it's not. It's different. And I have a huge respect for anybody that manages to get into even the top 100 on the New York Times bestseller list. But there's 2 things you should know. To get into the top 200 on Amazon today, you would have to sell between 700 and 1,000 books a day. Also, I recently found out that guess who watches the top 100 list on Amazon in various categories? Both the New York Times and traditional publishing houses. So here's the thing, when you launch on Amazon, you really need a solid plan.
Wow. Now, Ben, you are rewriting another book that you have written called Self-Publish Without Perishing. It contains 12 questions that aspiring authors need to answer. What are the 12 questions, and which are most important?
I started self-publishing without perishing before I worked on World-Class Speaking in Action. And it was based on my experience of, at the time, over 20 years in the printing industry. Over my career, I've worked with many authors who needed to produce their books. And I've seen some authors achieve great success and others not so much. Over time, I realized that there are factors that are critical to success, and I turned them into 12 interconnected questions that need to be answered. I'm not going to explain all the 12 questions now because we just don't have time, but I can tell you that failing to answer these questions leads to a garage full of unsold books. And the most important questions relate to marketing and editing. There's that.
Self-Publish Without Perishing. Why are you rewriting it?
By the time I finished the first version, some parts were out of date. Technology in printing has advanced and changed, and there's things like on-demand printing and ebooks that are more accessible than ever before. And my experience with World-Class Speaking in Action made me want to rewrite the section on marketing. So I'm adding information about how Mitch actually did the launch, how we planned the launch. And I'm expanding the section on editing.
Excellent. Look forward to that. Ben, if there is one thing you would emphasize for aspiring authors, what would it be?
Literally everybody's talked about the importance of editing. And yeah, it is absolutely essential. Get an editor involved while you're outlining, not after you're done the final draft. You'll create a much better book. Now, the thing that I would really emphasize is start your marketing plan when you're getting your ideas together. You know, start planning your marketing when you're creating your outline. Learn to pitch. That's really important, not just to your audience, but to the people who can help you reach your audience. Because at the end of the day, your book is actually a product you're taking to market. It's a business venture. If you have no market, you have no business. It's that simple.
Well, Ben, congratulations again with the success of World-Class Action Speakers in Action, and good luck in rewriting Publishing Without Perishing. Thank you for the chat. Back to you, Neha.
Thank you very much, Ben, for taking us on this wonderful success journey of yours all the way to the Amazon bestseller. Congratulations once again. For all the authors who want to be featured in the Amazon bestsellers category, get a selling plan, get an author, and most importantly, answer Ben's 12 questions. Thank you again, Ben. Our coordinates are now set to welcome a very special guest author, Martin Parnell. He's an author, an international keynote speaker, and the current district governor for Rotary District 5360. Martin is also a multi-Guinness record holder. He has authored 3 books as a part of the Marathon trilogy with the publisher Rocky Mountain Books. And the first book, Marathon Quest, put Martin as one of Alberta's top 5 authors for 2014 by CBC Radio. Hearty congratulations on that, Martin. Tonight, Martin will speak about his experience in publishing with a publisher. Please put your hands together for Martin Parnell and Joanne Smith.
Well, thank you very much, Neha. Martin, I am so lucky to get to interview you. You're our finals interviewee tonight, and you do something different than all the rest. You actually have used a publisher. Let's start with a simple question. Martin, I've been lucky enough to hear you speak. You are a compelling speaker. I am assuming that the book came after your professional speaking opportunities. What prompted you to expand on your speaking and write your first book?
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. Absolute pleasure to be here tonight. And yeah, the information I've collected already from the other speakers is only going to put me in good stead. It's an interesting question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? And for me, it really started when I was blogging. So I would say the writing started, I was blogging while I was running 250 marathons in 1 year. In 2010, I took on a challenge to raise money for the children's charity Right to Play. And so each day I ran, I blogged, and over that 1 year collected thousands and thousands of words. But I never thought of writing a book. It never crossed my mind. But a friend of mine, Lynn Cadence, said, oh, Martin, have you thought of writing a book? No. But she said, well, maybe we can do something. So Lynn had some connections in the publishing world, and she contacted Don Gorman from Rocky Mountain Books. And Lynn encouraged me to put together a book proposal, which is absolutely vital. And Don said, yeah, let's take the blogs and let's start working on putting a book together. And at that point, I had 100,000 words in the blog. So I had a good starting point. So really, I guess the book started, then I did my professional speaking first gig in the middle of 2011. So the book was on its way, and the book finally came out in September of 2012, Marathon Quest.
Wonderful. Now, I was going to ask you something different, but here's the question. Rocky Mountain Books, being a true publisher, what did they do to help you with your writing of your book?
Well, Rocky Mountain Books is an interesting, I'd call them somewhat of a boutique publisher. They publish 40 books a year, 20 in the spring, 20 in the fall, and they're a Western Canada publisher. And so their focus has traditionally been on mountain climbing, on the outdoor life, and they've expanded into adventure writing. And so, when I started working with Don, he brought a wealth of knowledge that really helped my type of book. And my type of book is a nonfiction memoir based on this running that I do and the kind of the outdoors lessons that I've learned. And so, Don's brought a lot of amazing help. And it's been mentioned earlier, for example, through the editing side, through the design of the book, and the knowledge that he brings has definitely helped me along my journey of writing and publishing the books.
Now, earlier, multiple people have mentioned the fact that they've had editors. I know earlier when we had discussions, I asked you to tell us about the different types of editors and why you would have them.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, what I've learned from doing my first 3 books is I like to get a lot of information into the manuscript, really put my heart and soul into it. And it's generally bigger than any book would be. And so the first editor that I would work with is a developmental or content editor. And we worked very closely together over a 3-4 month period. And I listened closely to what my developmental editor says. And we come up, and basically I've worked down to about 65,000 words for my books. And so that's really a huge stepping stone towards the final product. Next would be the copy editor, sentence structure, paragraphs, and so on. And finally, proofreading. And again, all these elements can be found in the self-publishing realm, but with Rocky Mountain Books and Don, he has a group of people who can really help me with the type of book I'm trying to do.
We are moving way too fast, which is in some ways really good, because we originally just mentioned your one book. Can you tell us about all of your books? And I know you have 3 and 1 coming out.
Absolutely. So the first book, Marathon Quest, was based on the 250 marathons I ran in 2010. And it's really the story of how I started running. I didn't start running till I was 47. So I was late to running, actually, fairly late to writing a book, but it's never too late to start running or to write a book. So, do remember that. And so that first book focuses on completion of the marathons and raising $320,000 for the children's charity Right to Play. My second book is Running to the Edge, and that talks about the initiative that I started called Quest for Kids. And it was 10 fundraisers or 10 quests, again, to try and raise money for Right to Play, this time $1 million. And it included setting 5 Guinness World Records and running the coast of England and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. But also it included an element when, after I had completed those quests, I suffered a massive clot on the brain. And it talks about the challenges of when you've been active, when you've been doing something, to suddenly stopping, being forced to stop through an illness or trauma, maybe it's, to a friend, that really changes your world. And how I found I had to deal with that through help of my friends, through my wife, through people in the community. And so that was a kind of a transitional book, which then led to The Secret Marathon. And it was during the time that I was recovering from the clot on the brain that I read an article about the very first woman in Afghanistan to run a marathon. And what I read there was that she had to deal with things like being called a prostitute while she was trying to train for the marathon, but also having rocks thrown at her to try and stop her from running. And again, it hit a chord with me. And I decided that if I got better and if I ran again, then I would go to Afghanistan and support the women and girls over there. And the book is about the journey on how I got to Afghanistan, which was some huge struggles, but then ran with the women and girls in Afghanistan and progressed from there for the Secret Marathon book. And my book that's coming up is a little different. It's called The Ageless Athlete. Age is just a number. And it's about a challenge I took on myself where I attempted to beat the times in my 5K, 10K, half marathon and marathon 15 years later. So I set these times in 2003, and just at the age of 62, just a couple of years ago, I attempted to beat those times. And so the other thing I found about writing a book is it leads you to many different directions. And The Secret Marathon is now a film. And The Ageless Athlete, and this is the manuscript. So this is the book to be, and that's a fascinating one. And Telus did a documentary. So I think one thing I want to say about writing a book is it was mentioned, I think we can all do it. There's a quote by Henry Ford: "If you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right." And so just take it on, just do it. It could start with blogs. It was mentioned, doing the 25 chapters. I think that's brilliant. But number one, get those words down. Get that 500 words a day or 5 days a week. Get a routine. It's the same way that I run a marathon. I run it one step at a time. It's a 42.2K challenge, but break it down. I run 10 minutes in 10-minute blocks, 9 minutes of running, 1 minute of walking. And I think that chunking down is one of the key things for all of us to think about.
Well, Martin, I was actually working on getting fit, and your walking so long, running so long has actually helped me very much. So I'm looking forward to your book. We've got a couple of minutes left. Do you have any last minute suggestions for any aspiring writers out there?
Yeah, one thing I would say is don't, if you're interested, don't discount the idea of having a publisher. One thing with Rocky Mountain Books is they are open for unsolicited book proposals. I realize a lot of publishers aren't, but keep that in mind. And I'm happy to share with the book proposal that I've been using with Rocky Mountain. So I think don't discount that. It's been mentioned during the evening that some of the key elements, and I'll just echo them. Editing, absolutely. It's the difference between a book and a book I think you can be proud of. It's simple as that. It was mentioned about marketing and promoting, and that's something Ben mentioned it, and my gosh, that's a challenge. I think writing a book is really half the job, and the other half is selling the books and the marketing and promoting. I think just one thing I want to add is the cover of the book is very important. So do think about that. Do think about what's a cover, and do get feedback on your cover, because that has a huge impact on the selling of books.
Well, thank you very much, Martin. I really appreciate you coming. I know that we will be having a Q&A right after this, so I'm just going to hand it back over to Neha. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you very much, Martin, from the bottom of my heart. You truly are an inspiration for aspiring authors and aspiring runners. So all of us who have a problem in just putting down our first words on the paper, or even lacing up our hiking boots, look no further, because Martin is an epitome of inspiration. Thank you once again, Martin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was indeed a starlit evening where we got up close with a few local stars and authors. As we begin our descent back to earth, I am reminded of one of my favorite adages. It is that of Edward Bulwer Lytton. The pen is mightier than the sword. And this evening, we got to witness the power and magic that a pen can wield through our local authors and their renowned books. This just leaves me with one thought, that books and words can have a profound impact in the minds of the readers. Think about it. Thank you for flying the MVP Advanced Author Space Shuttle. We have safely landed, but the seatbelt sign is still on because we are going to move on to the question and answer session. So this is your pilot signing off and handing over to Gordon Grant.
Great. Thank you very much, Neha. I appreciate your excellence tonight in helping us and guiding us on the journey we took. We have 3 questions tonight that came from the folks on YouTube, which I will toss out one at a time, but we still have a fair bit of time left in the agenda. So while I'm asking the questions, I would ask our speakers and authors to give some thought to one more piece of advice like we did at the first half of this session. But the first question that was posed to us tonight was, did you ever struggle with the discipline to write? And if so, what did you do to overcome that? Martin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it really probably is the key question for us to get the book done. The approach I take is to chunk it down. I mentioned that. And to pick a figure. I like to pick 500 words. And then what I find is once I get going, I can sometimes write more. And that really helps. I also find that I don't write linearly. So if there's an area I want to write on, I'll write it and it not necessarily in sequence. So I think that's the other thing. Find something that you can add and slowly build the manuscript. So just a couple of thoughts.
Great. And Ben, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah. Sadly, I think my video is still locked, but that's okay because I said earlier tonight I have a face for radio and a voice for newsprint. Anyway, yeah, writing is, Russ and Val talked about procrastination, and I'm twice the procrastinator of both of them put together. So you've really got to just do it. I mean, you don't say I'm writing a book. Don't start like that. Just say I'm going to write down how I feel, and eventually you'll start writing down how you feel about things. This is how I came up with the ideas that I used for the chapter for world-class speaking. I didn't say I was pitching a chapter initially. I was just going through, and when things came up, I would just go, that's an idea, I'll write it down. And I started trying to write on a regular basis, trying to take those ideas and, pull them together a little bit more. And gradually, it snowballs. A big thing is you've got to first get your subconscious to give you permission. And the way to do that is by making it something that's a habit that isn't threatening. Once it becomes something that's just something you do regularly, it's just something you do all the time. It's like, putting on your shoes in the morning. I'm doing this now. It's not something scary. It's not something big deal. I'm just going to do this now. And that will help you get past the fear of doing something bigger than you've ever done before.
Great, thank you. When I've worked with clients, I believe that there's a circle of thought to feeling to behavior to thought to feeling to behavior. And it fits in very well with what you're saying, is that if you have the feeling that you're going to write, the behavior follows that as a direct result. Russ, have you got some thoughts on this question as well?
Yeah, thanks very much, Gord. My thoughts on this are, we get up every morning and we brush our teeth, we go down, we eat our breakfast, maybe we walk our dog. We do all of these things that we're programmed to do every day, which it just comes naturally to us. We don't even think about it. So like I said before, you have to form the habit of actually writing. So going back to 500 words a day, just fit in a half an hour every day or 15 minutes to get started, whatever it is, pick a time. And instead of picking up your phone and checking Facebook or watching TV or doing something like that, say, this time of the day, this is what I'm doing. I am writing. And that's all I had to do. And I was so focused and determined. And of course I had Chuck keeping me accountable, so I had to get it done.
Awesome. And Leonard, I know as a school teacher, you're probably used to handing out assignments and making sure that it's accomplished. So have you ever struggled with discipline?
Yeah, I have, for sure. And like I said earlier with the interview, that, life kind of at times. And but I find what really works for me is that, and I try to share this with my creative writing students as well, like, we have to use our imaginations. We have to be creative. And one of the things that I've been doing with my students, my English students and my French students, is I'm using photography. I'm paying attention to a photographer back in my home province of Newfoundland and Labrador, Ray Mackey, and he does a lot of nature photography. So I share some of his pictures with my class, and I'll get my French students to write a French paragraph on that photo. I'll get my English students to come up with a poem based on that photo, and just to spark their creativity. And I've been in communication with Mr. Mackey, and we're considering putting a book together of his photos and my poetry, my description of his photos. So that's what disciplines me. Just remember that, Leonard, this should be fun. This should be creative, and use your imagination. And that, I think my students are getting excited by that. And that's what excites me too, as a teacher and as a writer.
Okay, thank you very much, Leonard. We've got another question, and I'm not sure which one of you would like to take it on to start this, but it's, do you have any tips on writing a technical book? The person asking the question wants to avoid it becoming a manual, but provide real useful information for the readers. So technical book, not a manual, and useful information. Which one of you would like to start with that? Stunned silence.
Okay. Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, Oliver. I mean, you know, I've never written a technical book, but I guess what I think the key is writing a story. Okay, I think, you know, you want to grab people's attention, and I feel, and you know, maybe that's something I should try, is to write a technical book with a story, but have a thread through it. Maybe have humor. Just have a way to engage people, so that once they're there, then the technical side they can stick with. Of course, it depends on the level of the technical level that we're talking about. But if it's not a manual, then I'd say look at a story, look at a thread through the book, maybe break it down into different pieces within each chapter, so that they're chunk size that, you know, a person can deal with. So just a couple of thoughts.
Okay, great, thank you.
Gord?
Go ahead, Ben.
The interesting thing, a lot of people don't think these things are technical books, but they are. Look at cookbooks. They are basically a manual, but they give you instructions for doing a specific thing. They give you the instructions about the logistics you are required to accomplish the goal. And then they give you step-by-step instructions as to how to assemble all these parts. My favorite cookbook is The Joy of Cooking. And there are large sections in that book that aren't just cut and dried recipes. It's explanations about things like, you know, what is good beef and what isn't. What makes good pastry and what doesn't. It's that sort of thing. It's figuring out what your audience needs that's relevant, and then including information, not just the step-by-step cut and dried details, but possibly, you know, what can go right, what can go wrong, that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Russ, have you got any thoughts on this?
No, I'll pass on this one. I'm not into technical writing at all. Sorry.
Okay. And Leonard, any ideas?
No, I don't have a lot of expertise with that either, Gordon, but I like what Martin said about that too, and Ben alluded to it as well. Like have something else to kind of draw the reader in beyond the technical piece, right? Some humor, some anecdotes about, you know, well, like mentioned the cookbook. Well, when I was cooking this meal here, this is what happened. You know, these little anecdotes around the recipes or around the technical writing.
Great, thank you. I think the lesson that we've all taken from this question is, I think it was Russ who mentioned it earlier, that we need to stay in our lane. That if we're going to be effective in our writing, we need to write in what we know or in a fashion that works for us. And stepping outside of that sometimes is difficult for us to do. The last question I have here is probably appropriate for all four. But after you've written a fair amount, be it one day, a week, or a month, how do you resist going back and starting to edit and rewriting and rewording it instead of just carrying on and writing more?
Well, I can, if I could, Gordon, when I think about, I write some poetry. When I think about writing poetry, I think about the quote from, I believe it was Mark Twain. He said, "A poem is never finished. It's just abandoned." so yeah, so we can refine our words, we can edit, but you know, sooner or later we have to send it out to the world, and we have to publish it, and you know, and then use the feedback to improve on the next time.
Great. And Martin, could you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I kind of, you know, go along with what Leonard's saying. I feel that's the route to go.
Okay. Russ, oh, sorry, Ben, go ahead.
A lot of the writing that I've done hasn't been, you know, for publication in terms of books. A lot of it has been things like advertising, stuff like that. And one of the greatest advertising copywriters that ever lived was a fellow called Eugene Schwartz. And this is how, this goes to procrastination as well. He used to set a certain time every day when he was going to write. And he would sit there with a pencil and a piece of paper and whatever material he had that was like source material. And all he was allowed to do was look at the source material, write with the pen on the piece of paper, or look out the window or look at the wall or drink his coffee. But he was not allowed to do anything else during that period. He wrote. Editing was a different time. And I know some people who work in that field and also write books will actually write to a certain point, but they'll have time set aside for review. Now, this is something that we do in design. You never throw away the original. Okay? Do not edit or revise the original. Keep it. Edit a copy, always. Because you may go down a path with your editing and reviewing and go, wait a minute, I've completely turned this horse into a giraffe. How do I get it back to being a horse? Well, if you edited the original, that could be really hard. The days of writing on, with a pen and a piece of paper, you might have a stack of originals sitting there. These days with computers, it's really easy to trash the original. Never work on the original, always work on a copy.
Thank you, Ben. And Russ.
Yeah, what I'll say is, because I was working with Chuck, I mean, he gave me some great advice first. He said, just start writing. Don't worry about the grammar or the editing or anything like that. Just write. So when we got to the end of a chapter and everything, then he'd say, okay, we got to change this or whatever. So I would change it again, but we didn't worry about the grammar being perfect or anything. So when it came to where the book was ready and it had to go to the editors and I was editing it first, I was so embarrassed how poor my grammar was in there. And, then Chuck was my first editor and he came up with piles and piles of stuff that needed to be fixed. And then I thought Chuck is too close to this book as well. So I took it to another Toastmaster, actually, Flo Sherpanese, and she did a fabulous job on it as well, finding some other things. And my mistake, and this is a good lesson for everybody, I was anxious to get my book done because I had an event where I wanted my book. So after Flo rushed through and she said, Russ, I know I could do more with this, I took the book and I got my first printing done and I sold 300 books, I think it was. So I did what I wanted to, but there was several grammatical errors in there still. So after that, another Toastmaster, Susan Kramer, said, Russ, I'd really like to edit this book as well, further edit it and just change some words here and there. So she did that for me as well. But the key here is if you've got time, don't rush your book to get it done. Make sure you go through the process of editing it properly and have a few sets of eyes on it.
Great, thank you very much. Before we start,
sorry for interrupting you, but we do have at least 4 more questions, one for a specific author, if we wanted to ask those ones as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the first question is for Martin. What do you recommend is important for an author to do who wants to work with a traditional publishing house?
Okay, so let's start off with the book proposal. It's critical that you put your best foot forward when you have an opportunity to get in front of a publisher. And so the book proposal in the simplest of layouts, and you can Google templates for book proposals, but the one I tend to use is fairly straightforward. It has an introductory letter. It'll have what the first chapter, then there'll be a synopsis of the other chapters, and then there's a biography. But one of the key elements is the author's platform. And again, do Google the author's platform. But basically, it shows your social media reach, any awards, any information on you. And the reason that's so important is a publisher obviously is in the business of selling your book. And the more you have to offer, in that author's platform, then the more likelihood you'll get of having a publisher interested.
Great. And Rebecca, the next one.
The next one comes from YouTube, and it's directed to Ben. The question is, what were your 12 questions that you talk about in your book?
Okay. I had an idea that somebody was going to ask this, and it's only fair to warn you that in the revised version, these may change, but these are really the things that will make a big difference. First one, why are you going into the publishing business? Why? Understand. Somebody earlier tonight talked about, understanding why, and it's really important. If you don't understand why, it's sort of like if you set out on a trip and you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So if you don't understand why, you could get very lost. Who is your market? That's the next question. And it's important because your market is not necessarily your audience. Your audience are the people that will pay attention to you, listen to you, read you, no matter what. Okay? They're the people that are your audience. Your market are the people who will pay you for it. Big difference. An audience might listen to you for free, but a price tag on it might not be your entire audience that's willing to pay for it. So understanding who is your market and how big it is and is it viable, it's really important. Who's going to handle all the parts of your project? You're the author, but you're going to need a whole lot of people. This takes a team. Who is your editor? Okay, are they a professional editor, or are they just a friend who writes pretty? Do they understand your subject? Do they understand your audience? You're hiring people to help you with a project. It's like building a house. These are the contractors that are going to work on your project. You want to interview them. You want to know who they are. What difference does editing make? We've gone through this already tonight. It makes a big difference. Have you got the right stuff? Is your information current and valid? This is why I'm rewriting the book. My information became outdated in certain parts. I'm rewriting it. Do you have the rights to it? I've seen a lot of things published that then turn around and cause a lot of problems because people didn't really have the rights to what they were using. It could be information, it could be images. There's a lot of things like that. Who is your designer? Who is your printer? If you're going to print a book, are they equipped to do this right? What are your readers going to do with this? This is a big factor that gets overlooked, and I've seen projects completely miss this mark. And like I said, like I say, ends up with a garage full of books. How do you measure the best value when you're hiring and paying, when you're paying for things? You've got to understand that. What are your self-publishing options? I mean, this is a book that I'm writing about self-publishing. So what are the options? Do you do it all yourself? Do you go through a service? People mention CreateSpace and Kindle books and things like that. There are actually, nowadays, there are actually reputable self-publishing services. In Canada, the two I can think of are Tellwell and Friesen Books. Friesen is huge. And they've got resources like you wouldn't believe because they're directly tied to one of the biggest book printing companies in North America. And how are you going to take this thing to market? Like I said before, if you don't have a market, you don't have a business, and this really is a business. Those are actually the 12 questions.
Great, thank you very much, Ben. Another question we have tonight is, have you ever been involved with an author's mastermind group, and was it effective?
No.
It appears not.
No.
Hey, Rebecca, what have I missed on the questions?
I see at least 3 more. I know we're running short on time, so I'll just ask this other one from YouTube land. I'll leave it up to the organizers. For this one is a generic question for anyone. Is there a way to research publishers, their niches, and their willingness to accept unsolicited proposals?
Maybe I'll jump in on that one, Rebecca. A suggestion, there's no easy answer, but let's see what we can do here. A suggestion would be to find 5 other books that are published by publishers that are in the same genre that yours is. Find out the publisher, Google the publisher, and find out what their criteria is for sending in book proposals. If maybe the first 5 don't work, check another 5. I'd also suggest looking at smaller publishers. You know, check out the big ones are very difficult, but some of the smaller ones are open to unsolicited book proposals.
Great, thank you, Martin. Any other suggestions from the gentleman there tonight? I think we are doing well. Rebecca, we probably have time for one more question if you have it there.
Sure, this one, I cannot remember, but it came from either Zoom or YouTube. I queued up a few, but this one's, what's the single most important reason most people never finish their books that could have helped people, brought beauty or wisdom into the world? So what's the most important reason that they never finish their book?
Well, if I could, Rebecca, respond to that one. I once read a book, really good book, one of the best books I've ever read by Stephen Pressfield, called The War of Art. And in that book, he talks about, the theme of the book is about resistance. So if we're going to put our art out to the world, publish our book, we've got to overcome that resistance. And that resistance probably shows up every morning when we get up. Okay, human nature, I guess. But if we can overcome that resistance and be persistent and be consistent, yeah, then we'll get our words out there. We'll get our thoughts out to the world and make a contribution to humanity.
Thank you, Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
That's there's the huge thing called Imposter Syndrome, where you look at what you're doing and you go, who the heck am I to, you know, where do I get off talking about this? You know, I'm just this guy. Well, you have absolutely a right to talk about your experience, and guess what? Somebody else may have written about it, but they're not you. And your experience is unique. So do the best you can with it. And these days, there's so many options to do this without really destroying yourself. Just go for it. It's going to give value to somebody, I'm sure. So I you know, when I see somebody publish a book and succeed, it gives me such joy. Mostly because I'm addicted to reading, but that gives me more material. But it's really like the resistance, the imposter syndrome. It's like somebody said earlier, you know, write it, singers sing, bakers bake. Why is it that as a writer, you don't want to do the work? Just do it.
Thanks, Ben. We've come to the end of our evening, and I would like to thank very much our authors for their time tonight. This is a very typical MVP effort. I think everybody that is involved in our club was involved in some way and in some fashion in pulling on tonight. Special thanks goes to Martin. Martin, I've heard you speak many times at running rooms. I've followed in your footsteps on a few runs, and I've always been, always enjoyed my time in hearing you speak. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us again tonight. So with that, we're going to put up all the contact information of our speakers. They have very graciously offered to present their names and their email addresses, and they are willing to take questions from our audience and do what they can to help you expand your career as a writer. So with that, I will say good night. Thank you very much. It has been an enjoyable evening, and I would particularly like to thank the coordinator of our event who put hours and hours of effort into this, Sheree Roshani, who took the lead and made this night come to fruition. So thanks and good night.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, if anybody would like to, could we get a shot of the authors before we go? 1, 2, 3. Well, that's